Welcome, Wargamers, to the Shrine of Chaos. Today, we got a special guest with us. We have Jeremy from Black Magic Craft. We're going to be discussing some of his cool and unique things. If you've never heard of him before, he's big on YouTube. Cullen actually introduced me to him. One day he was looking at his stuff, and I looked at it, and I saw this awesome shack that he made out of his brain, because that's ultimately where it came from. It's in the form of terrain, which is near and dear to my heart, because that's where I started with 13 years ago in the hobby, making terrain tutorials. So I always love that when I see that. And glad to have you on the show. Welcome, Jeremy.
Hello, hello. Thanks for having me.
So first and foremost, what's your background in terms of, by the way, guys, for those of you who are wondering, I just literally met Jeremy like 10 minutes ago.
The first time we've ever talked.
It's the first time we ever talked. So everything I'm about to ask him, I'll be asking for the first time. So I'll be learning alongside with you guys. By the way, I've included links to all of Jeremy's sites, his website, his Facebook, his Patreon. Everything's in this post. So if you want to check him out and support him, go there. So question. So what's your background?
In a general sense, before YouTube and before terrain, was as a career, I was a renovation carpenter. So my background is construction. Basically,
Okay.
I finished high school, went to college, learned carpentry, got into renovation specifically.
Yep.
Did that for about 10 years. And then that's when I started building terrain, was when I was on the tools. I got into the hobby like fairly recently. I've only been tabletop gaming for about 5 years. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, I can build stuff. And I knew a lot of building materials just from work. And as I started diving into YouTube and seeing people building things, using stuff I was familiar with, I was like, you know what? There's a lot of other stuff that I know from construction that I can use. And I just dived headfirst into it. And at the same time, too, my personal kind of interest background is I used to produce electronic music. So I was a musician, released a bunch of albums. So I was a guy swinging a hammer in the days and making music at night. And then I had a kid and I couldn't really make loud noises doing music with a new baby. Started a quiet hobby of gaming and building terrain. So the construction turned into building terrain, and the music production turned into making videos. And here I am now. And now I no longer work construction and I no longer produce music. I make hobby videos.
And so
That's how
that
I got here.
answers my next question. So it's full time for you now.
Yeah, it's been full time for, I'm almost probably 2 full years in full time
Oh,
now.
congratulations.
So
That's
I've
fantastic.
been doing it for a while. I took the plunge into full-time YouTube pretty like early in terms of stats. I
Right.
think I jumped into full-time YouTube when I was around 30,000 subscribers.
Okay.
And now I'm at like over 300. So it's been a while, but it was I think I did the channel for about three years before I went full time, because I'm about 5 years total now.
Right.
So it took me 3 years to get to 30,000 subs and full time ability,
Yeah.
and then 2 years of full time to kind of get to where I am now. It kind of how
Right.
it goes.
So yeah, I mean, looking at your videos and stuff, I mean, it's completely makes sense why and how it's exploded at the rate at which it has. Because I got to be honest, when I'm watching your videos, first off, hats off, man, incredibly entertaining. Watching them, I'm drawn in, and there's this art aspect too of like you go from beginning to end. You have this project, and there's steps along the way, and it's not done in a typical way where it's like step one this, step two that. It's kind of like we're seeing the organic process just unfold from your brain. It's like, okay, I'm going to make this, and this is where we're going. It's kind of like a journey that you present with that's how I felt anyway when I was watching
Which
it. Like,
which is
went on a
good.
journey with you as you're making your stuff.
That's sort of the goal. I mean, like everything in the hobby on YouTube, I started essentially with tutorials, right? But even right at the beginning, I found a lot of tutorials online, and I wanted to do my own. And kind of like my music background in terms of just like creating a vibe kind of came into my stuff, and I sort of tried to make videos more like composing music a little bit, to make them a little bit more immersive than just, hey, I'm making a video how to make little tiny trees.
Right.
But I didn't know anything about video production at the beginning. Like I literally, if you watch the first video on my channel, that's the first video I've ever made.
Okay.
And so my entire channel's back catalog is me learning video production.
Cool.
And it's certainly gotten better now compared to before.
Right.
But I always tried to create a kind of more interesting vibe than just a basic tutorial. And as that progressed and I started to understand the medium better, my goal was to really treat each video a little bit more like a short film, short story, and no longer be a step-by-step how to build something, but simply be more like a vlog style. I'm not telling you how to make something. I'm showing you how I ended up making something, kind of showing the process. So rather than spending time making 3 versions of something to get it right and get the steps down and then show you just a final, this is exactly how you make this thing, part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's more, here's me fumbling through it and sharing my thoughts, because I think that's more realistic to the average hobbyist. You know, they're not doing things perfectly the first time around. They're kind of learning through doing. And yeah, you can teach people how to make a thing through 10 steps, but I think it's more valuable to teach people the thought process of how you got to those 10 steps, so people can learn, you know, how to think creatively and problem solve. And at the end of the day, you know, there's vague tutorials, but the goal isn't how to build a thing. It's just trying to inspire people to hobby.
Right.
It's more about the inspiration. I know some people will duplicate a project exactly the same as I made it, but that's not my goal. My goal is for people to see what I did, take some ideas from it, and jump in and just do something inspired by it.
Right. Yeah, no, that actually makes complete sense. And it certainly shows in the style of your videos. Because, and I think it resonated so much with me because when 13 years ago, when I did a handful of terrain tutorials, I didn't do very many. I did a handful of them. I had a similar way of doing it where it was, I'd show mistakes, right? I did the steps because I thought that's what you needed to do. But if I made a mistake, I showed it and said, here, this is where a mistake is made. Try not to do this. And then I would just continue on. And so when I saw that, when you do, I'm like, that's great. And the one video in particular, it was a shack. First off, the thumbnail for that video, it's like, it kind of looks like Weta Workshop. You know, in fact, I thought that's what it was. I'm like, cool, what's this? How do you make that? And like, you go through the process and I see the materials that you're using at the beginning. I'm like, dang, man, dang, he makes it look like that in the end. That is nuts. And so here's a question I have for you. Were you growing up, like, were you artistically inclined? Like, did you gravitate to that? Or is this something you kind of learned about yourself later on in life?
So it's kind of funny. As a youth and as a teenager, I would say that I always dreamed of being artistic, and I always dreamed of being famous for some sort of art, right? Like when I was 15 years old, writing my first albums, I'm like, I'm going to be a musician on the stage and be famous and do this. And I always wanted to be a public figure and a performer with music. And I always really wanted to be an artist. And I was always a terrible artist. Couldn't draw to save my life, which I fully know is because, you know, visual arts they're not an inherent skill. They're a learned skill. It's like you can learn to draw the same way you can learn to type fast or play guitar, like the basics. There's artistic stuff that gets layered on top. Yeah. But I never took the time to learn those certain skills. And because I never got good at them, I never did it. So entering into adulthood, I always had this like burning kind of regret of never doing the artistic things I wanted. I was doing music and I was doing fairly well with music, you know, relative to the scale of the type of music I was making. But I always had this void, I guess, this creative void of actually making physical things in the world. I was being creative every day in my job in construction.
Yeah.
You know, you're building stuff, and I was doing very high end renovations, like I'm talking $700,000 kitchens. So there was a lot of intricate, ornate, you know, weird problem solving, and it was very creative
Hmm.
and artistic in a degree, but it wasn't artistic for the soul, obviously, right? It's
Right.
just, you know, making a thing for people to cook in. So
Yeah.
I had this kind of need for this, and it was never satiated by anything. And that's why when, you know, I suddenly decided to try tabletop gaming, and instantly I recognized, I'm like, oh, here's a thing that like I can do this. This is approachable. Guys that were on YouTube before me, like for me, it was the DM's Craft and Hanker and Fernail at Runehammer. It used to be called Drunkens and Dragons. These guys kind of showed me instantly. I'm like, hey, this is a really creative, artistic thing that I could definitely do this.
Hmm.
And I started, and it snowballed, and became a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy where it's like finally I had this outlet and I could dive into it, and I got confidence in it. And somehow over the past 5 years, I became what I would consider a competent artistic person in this medium. I'm not Weta Workshop, but I'm certainly doing things that can hold their own and inspire people. So yeah, so now I have that creative outlet that I always kind of wanted, but I learned it all over the past 5 years. Like there's no background of doing other similar things that really tied into that.
You know, it's interesting how it's a reflection of the project, because as just like your terrain tutorials, terrain videos, we'll call them. I mean, you kind of go. That's how you. That's how you did it in real life with your channel and
Yeah.
learning the videos. Like you kind of just learned as you went along, and so that's how you do. That's what you do for your projects. So it's
Yeah, and
funny.
yeah, exactly. There's like, if you look at it in a micro and a macro sense, the each video is kind of its own little journey,
Hmm.
like that of, oh man, how are we going to do this? Okay, I'm going to do this. Oh, that looks terrible. I'm going to throw some more stuff on it. No, it still looks terrible. Do some, cut that off. Okay. Hey, look, it's starting to look good. And it goes, and it's this little micro journey of creativity and expression. But the channel itself is a large document to that journey. And it's kind of interesting because, you know, I, for the most part, try to keep things really approachable. And I think that's kind of been the ticket to my success, is that people can just randomly stumble onto basically anything, any video I'm doing, whatever YouTube randomly shows them, and they can look at it and go, huh, you know, I could do that. And they try. But some people still will be reluctant and think, you know what, I can't do that. You know, like, how could I ever do that? And I say, listen, go back to go to my channel, put the videos in chronological order, and start at episode 1. Excuse the crappy video, but like look at the project, and look at what look at where I am right now, and look at where I was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Because I guarantee you, anyone is at the same skill level that I was at when I put my face on YouTube for the first time and made my first little foam hill video.
Mm.
And you can watch that progression every little step of the way.
Cool.
And my journey is going to be the same as the average hobbyist journey. You got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Keep doing something. Eventually you'll get better. It's just the way it works. Put in your hours and you'll get good at it.
So, a question which you kind of semi-answered with your music background is the style of your videos, because it feels like there's this like heavy metal style video, but in the form of a terrain video. And so where your music, that's a huge influence on like your video style, would you say?
It is. Now my musical background, it wasn't metal. It was industrial music, which is, you know, similar aesthetically but very different instrumentation wise. It was all electronic.
Okay.
So the music I made was all electronic based, but it was very dark and very aggressive and atmospheric. So there's certain things that crossed over in terms of branding. You know, like when I started, it wasn't super fun, happy hobby time with Jeremy. It was black magic,
Hmm.
right? And there was a darker vibe and a darker aesthetic, and so that's kind of carried into the channel. But the way I approach video editing calls a lot on my background with electronic music production, because
Hmm.
when you edit video, it's linear based progression of clips. When you edit music, it's linear based progression of clips, just usually a lot more than there would be with video.
Hmm.
And I don't have a background in film, so I don't like know any of the rules of like how to edit well in an engaging way to keep it interesting and moving and paced. I don't know that, but what I do know is how to format a song and keep it timed and on pace, and
Interesting.
have an intro and have a bridge and have a chorus and have an outro. And
Interesting.
so that's what I took, and I used what I knew and I applied that to video. So my videos, I kind of edit them like I would edit songs to a degree, and I kind of
Right.
lean on that. And the odd time you'll see one video here and there where I just don't say anything, and there's just the video is really timely and cut up to the music, and it's almost like
Yes, I've noticed that.
making a short little 20-second music video within my train video. And for me, that's kind of one, just something to do to keep it interesting and have my own thing. But those are the days when I'm editing and I'm like, you know what, I kind of miss like editing mixing music.
Right.
And rather than going down that rabbit hole, it's like, okay, well, I'm just gonna use this as an outlet to kind of fulfill the same need for doing that kind of work. So when you see that kind of pop into a video, that's where it's coming from, is a background of composing music and DJing, and so I kind of try to blend that together.
Right. Uh, so do you? Uh, I'm not sure if this is a silly question or not, but the music in your videos, is it all your music?
No, that's not a silly question. That's a common question, actually. It makes sense if people know the background.
Right.
Early on, the first year or two of the channel, the theme music was something that I wrote for the channel. But I very quickly realized that the idea of composing my own music for my videos is just not something that I have the time or resource available to do. So I rely
Mm.
on other people's music, which for me is fine. I like that because I like taking something someone else has done and using it in my own way. And I find a lot of inspiration in the music. Like I put a lot more weight on the music in my videos than I would assume the average hobby channel does. Like I spend a lot of time sourcing music, picking appropriate music, editing to it, uh, and that kind of helps shape the way my videos look and feel and sound. And I would love to compose for them, but I just don't have the time. And also, I don't know that that would necessarily be the right thing to do, because you can't do everything. You
Right.
guys know, you guys are a big operation with a lot of people, and having teams is really helpful in big creative endeavors. It's really important to utilize other people's skill sets, and so that you can focus on your own skill sets in the most meaningful way. I'm a one-man show. I don't have any other staff. I don't have an editor. I don't have a cameraman. I don't have a person running social media. I'm doing all those things. So I know that I can't write the music, but also, even though I'm not working with these musicians, it's a music licensing service.
Mm.
It's like I get to lean on their skills and use them, and it helps me stay creative and focused and in other ways. So no, not my own music. I kind of wish it was, but also I don't think it's practical, or that it would necessarily be a great idea for me to make all the music myself.
It makes sense though, because as you said, right? Like, I mean, you have a lot of hats that you're wearing for your
Yeah.
channel. So Black Magic Craft, the name. What inspired the name of the channel?
Just like it was literally, I made my first couple things. I wanted to post pictures to a Facebook group that I was a member of to show what I was working on. And I was like, you know what? I need a Facebook page where I can host this stuff. This was before I even decided to make videos. I just needed a page where I could host stuff. And I'm like, it needs a name because I know from my background in music, you need to brand early. And I don't know, it was just one of those just rolling around in my head. And I knew I wanted it to be kind of on the darker end of things. And, my stuff was focused around D&D. And, the world of Dungeons and Dragons has a lot of, dark arcane magic. And that appealed to me. And yeah, black magic craft. It was kind of the first thing that popped into my head.
Okay.
And it stuck. And thankfully, it's not a name I regret, because in my music background, I had situations where I named projects early and then they got to a point of success past the point where I could rename them and I regretted the name and I was stuck with it. 5 years in, I'm okay with this name. I'm happy about it. It fits the channel, it fits the theme, and I'm good with it. But there wasn't any deep planning or meaning behind it.
It's funny. It's like mini wargaming. The reason why we're called mini wargaming is because miniature wargaming was taken.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it was like for search engine optimization purposes. Oh, mini wargaming. People search for mini wargaming. We'll come up first, and so there was no, other than that, there's no reason. There's no, I grew up with this, and it wasn't nothing nostalgia.
And for me, the only thing I knew starting out was like, I have to have the word craft in the title, because when I got into it, there wasn't a lot of people on YouTube doing terrain videos, and there was even less people doing terrain videos specifically for tabletop RPGs, right? There was more dominance for wargaming. So when I, got interested, there was DM Scotty, which is, his channel is called the DM's Craft, and Wylock, who at the time, his channel was called Wylock's Crafting Videos. Mm-hmm. So both of them had craft in the name. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to do stuff like they're doing. And that's like, my first video is literally me saying, hey, these are cool channels. I want to try it. And yeah, that's where I felt like the crafting thing was like this unifying part of the name for what was a very infantile community, like little corner of YouTube. Now, 5 years later, the hobby space on YouTube is huge, and there's infinite channels, more than I can keep track of. Mm-hmm. There's so many people involved. But at that time, it was really small. Like the Facebook group that I help run, the Tabletop Crafters Guild, we have, I don't know, 35,000 members, something like that. At that time, that group existed. That was the group I joined, and DM Scotty ran it. When I joined, there was 1,200 people. Mm-hmm. It was a little small community. So that naming thing was sort of meant to kind of be part of that little collective. But then it grew, and it was no longer a little tiny niche corner of the internet.
Yeah. So what do you find is like, what inspires you to make stuff?
How do you get
ideas?
I mean, one, the obligation of, hey, I got to make something. So there's and I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, that's a really powerful, motivating tool of, I literally have to make something. So it kind of just forces me to do it. Now, normally in a pre-COVID world, my regular Dungeons and Dragons game was a big inspiration for a lot of what I made. I would say that if you looked at the stuff I was making, it was maybe like a 50-50 split of, I made this project because it was something that my game led to or needed or wanted. And then the other 50% was, hey, I have a cool idea for something I'm going to make for the channel. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to make it work in my game. Right?
Oh, okay.
It's like, it wasn't always one or the other. It's about a 50-50 split. So the game itself, the need for things was the inspiration. Now with COVID, I haven't played a game for 9 months now. So that's off the table currently. Temporarily, we shut down. So I don't have that motivation. So I'm just having to find things that have other needs. And so that brought me to, over the past year, I started doing a lot more just miniature dioramas, things that aren't meant for tabletop gaming, things that have no purpose other than the fun of building it and then putting it on a shelf. And that's been really great for me because that's sort of something I've wanted to do for a long time with the channel. Because a lot of time with terrain, you're kind of forced to make things almost a lower quality because they're meant, especially for RPGs, it's something that might get used once or twice. You don't want to pour a lot of hours into it to throw something on the table that might get used for one session. If you're lucky, you'll recycle it at some point. There's no point spending a lot of time on it. Now with wargaming, one great thing about the terrain is that it's going to get a lot more uses. You make a set and that table or whatever, it's going to get played a lot. So you can put a lot more love into it and justify it. But with dioramas, the end result is a display piece. So I've been working a lot more on those, and I've been really inspired by, movies that I like, TV shows, and also inspired by the miniatures I'm working with now with 3D printing, resin printing of minis. There's so many amazing sculptors that are creating monthly services for downloadable files. And those have been companies that I've worked with a lot as sponsors. And it's been a really wonderful partnership because it's really natural. And I get inspired to make stuff based on their models, right?
Right.
They have a theme for the month of whatever it may be. And I look at that and go, wow, this is cool. So their theme for the month is the Underdark or goblins or wizard's lair. So I'm going to make something in that theme. And it kind of leads me down different pathways of things to create.
Right. So from the sounds of it, it's just kind of for gaming, maybe not for gaming, but used in gaming. You kind of get ideas from anywhere.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
even with the gaming stuff, with the gaming stuff, the inspiration is a more practical inspiration of what's something that people need or want or that is usable for games. And let's figure out a way to make those pieces mechanically usable, simple, straightforward. A lot of the inspiration is just the problem solving of, I know this is a thing that people want. How do I make it in a really stripped down, simple way that basically anyone can do?
Right.
So sometimes the inspiration isn't the final project, but how do I take an idea and refine it and simplify it down to the point where literally anyone could make it in their apartment with a handful of things they bought from the dollar store or Walmart. So that's kind of a big motivator for me, is just kind of reverse engineering an item. And it could be an item that, everybody's made, like it's been made 100 times in the hobby, but how do I reverse engineer it and simplify it and just make it as straightforward and easy and cheap as possible for people? That's one end of the coin. But on the other end, sometimes it's just, hey, The Mandalorian's a cool show. I want to build a cool Mandalorian diorama to put on my shelf because that's just what I want to do. So,
So what's your favorite kind of thing to make? Scenery, buildings, like what would you say?
I think for me, my favorite thing is little diorama scenes. I think that's where I get the most personal joy out of. Is like creating that little snapshot of a moment in time in a world. I really love that. And it's not something that I'm particularly good at yet. I think I've gotten quite good at making terrain and making it approachable and doing that simplification process. I feel pretty confident in my ability with that. When it comes to dioramas, I'm not amazing at it. My miniature painting skills are intermediate, but that's kind of also why that's a very appealing, enjoyable process for me, because there's still a lot of room for personal artistic growth. And every time I do one, it gets a little bit better. Whereas making basic terrain, I never feel like I've really had a huge creative breakthrough or success a lot of the time. But when I make a little diorama, maybe it's some small part of it that I learned something, and it really inspires me and makes me feel good about moving on to the next thing. So that's what I personally enjoy doing. And actually lately, my own hobby time, which doesn't exist much, almost everything is channel related at this point. But the moments of hobby time I've carved out for myself have now been building my Warhammer army, which is a whole new world to me. But I've been slowly building my army and painting it and customizing it. And there's been something really refreshing about that for me, rather than trying to think about how to build terrain or design things, of just putting together a kit. It's already beautifully sculpted, put it together, maybe make a few changes and just make it look thematically like mine. So that's been bringing me a lot of personal hobby joy over the past couple months.
What army are you collecting?
So I'm building a Death Guard army, which is perfect for my personal kind of building aesthetic. Like, making gross, gooey, plaguey, gross boys is just, it suits me perfectly well. I don't know or care how good they are, how tactical, nothing. I've literally played 2 games of Warhammer over the past year since I started. Like with COVID stuff, I have one friend, we played twice, and it was me learning the rules, and him, he's a long time player, he's been playing for 20 years, but it's him learning 9th edition. So we're kind of just fumbling through it. But for me, I don't care. I'm literally just building. I don't look at lists. I don't look at stats. I just look at models and go, that's a cool model. That's a cool kit. I'm going to buy that and put it together. And I'm slowly building up a mass of painted, assembled models. And it will hit a point when I go, okay, let's make a list that I can actually play. But I'll have a lot of things to choose from.
Yeah.
I might be making some really dumb decisions that somebody with a lot of knowledge in the game and foresight would never make. Like, maybe it's not practical that I just built 4 fetid bloat drones. Maybe that's not a thing that I should do. But 4 of them look cool.
Yep.
I don't know if I'll ever run 4 of them. Like, I have no idea.
Right.
But they're really cool models, and I really love them, and I wanted to make 4 of them. So that's what I'm doing.
Do you have the lawnmowers in the front or the shooty guys?
So
or am I
2
thinking
of them, I did them differently. 2 of them came from whatever that kit, the starter set from 8th edition was. So it was limited to just having
Dark Imperium
specific guns.
Yeah.
But the 2 that I bought, what did I even put on them? I didn't put the lawnmower things on. I wanted to. I thought that was the coolest, most gnarly option, and I put one on. But that kit, that piece, the way that those 3 pieces lock together, I found it really fiddly and annoying, and I didn't like the way it was sitting or looking good. So I ended up pulling it off and putting guns on it. Don't ask me which guns, because I don't know what they're all called yet. So they're all shooty. They're all shooty, but with different guns.
Wow. Itman Sira, thank you very much. Itman Sira just donated. Completely like we didn't ask for that, so thank you for that. I figured I'd just mention that really quick.
Thanks, man.
So, okay, I mean, back to the stuffs. So, I mean, I didn't know that you were collecting Death Guard. So it's funny you should be collecting Death Guard because you are here in the Shrine of Chaos, which is very fitting, very appropriate. I stumbled across your stuff a number of weeks ago, contacted you, invited you to be on. I didn't know you were collecting Chaos, and just so happens to be Death Guard.
Yep.
So that makes me so happy. I can't believe that. I don't think it's coincidence.
Hey, Black Magic Craft is certainly not going to be collecting any good guys. I have to go for the gnarliest bad guys around.
Yeah, they're pretty gnarly and they're pretty bad. So I think that's it's a perfect fit. So I wanted to ask you about what would you say is the most how do I articulate this? So out of all the projects you've done on your channel, the ones where it looks like it's super difficult just by looking at the finished result, which one would you say is actually, everyday items, the easiest one if you know what the items are to start?
So there's kind of an easy answer for that, because it's the ones that I know whenever I have a guest in my home who comes into my studio who's not into the hobby, and they just look at all this oh my God, what the hell, what is all this? What they almost always zone in on are the little medieval Tudor style houses.
Okay.
Now that's what they, wow, these are amazing. Like, are these a model kit? But those are just made of foam. Like some of them are just made of dollar store foam, a knife, glue, paint.
Hold on.
And a lot of them are designed in a way that are beginner projects that anyone can do.
Uh-huh.
You don't need hot wire tools. I mean, it helps, but I've made some that are literally just dollar store foam core and a knife. And people look at it and think they're like a movie prop,
Right.
you know? So that's the one where there's the biggest gap between the final result and like what actually makes it. Because there's a lot of things that are, if you look at it, people go, oh yeah, that's pretty simple. But those are the things that were a lot of effort and took a lot of work. Like I made a set of tiles for Frostgrave,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a big, huge board, like a 4x4 board of 12x12 modular tiles. But I actually like hand sculpted my own cobblestone, cast them in silicone, molded them in silicone, cast them in resin. But if you look at it, it's just a 12x12 tile of cobblestone. It looks nice, but it's not really that involved. But it actually was like hundreds of hours of work and molding and casting, and it's original and it's mine. But the effort to reward is a lot tighter versus some of the stuff that is just whipped together really quickly in an afternoon, and is impressive to people who don't know any different.
Right. You would never know the complexity that went into creating it by looking at it.
Exactly.
And conversely with the Tudor houses, like, man, how'd you make that? Oh, it's just dollar store foam core.
Yeah, and I intentionally I do this thing when I build my stuff where terrain, buildings, whatever, always have the bottom, the ugly bottom or inside. Now, personally, I'm the kind of person that would like to finish that off nicely.
Mm-hmm.
Put a nice black bottom on it so it looks good. You flip it over, maybe even paint the bottom depending what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I intentionally always leave the underside and inside of the stuff I make raw and ugly, so that when someone looks at it and like, wow, this is amazing. Like, what is that made of? I can flip it over and look inside and be like, look, it's a cardboard, hot glue, a little bit of insulation foam, so they can really see it. It's really jarring.
Mm-hmm.
But I like being able to show people who aren't into the hobby that, because it often blows their mind. And I can just grab a piece of foam and be like, this is what it is made of. Just this, and look inside. That's all it is. It's just layers of that.
What's the average amount of time would you say it takes to do one of your projects?
You know what? They're all very short because I make a weekly video,
Mm-hmm.
and that means I have, in general, I'm completing a project a week.
Mm-hmm.
But in that week, I also have to film, edit, run the business, all these other things. So I have a very strict time limit of 2 working days to do everything I make.
Right.
So in general, we'll call it a time limit of 16 hours. Now, some things take less if they're a simple, quick little thing. Some things take more, so they'll be more stretched out. But in general, everything I make in a 2-day working window, which to me is useful to my audience, I believe, because then it makes everything I make approachable for someone to bang out in the weekend. Right. It's
True.
kind of like it's a weekend project. It's 2 days. You can do it. Maybe it'll take a little bit longer and you finish it off in a couple of evenings. If you're new, you're slower. Might take you 4 days, but I'm not doing anything that will take a very long time. I have done some projects that take a lot longer, but with YouTube, that tends to not work very well, because then it becomes a multi-part video. And just unfortunately, the way YouTube works and the audience viewing habits work, multi-part series tend to not perform very well. So I do those very sparingly, like maybe once a year there's a thing I'll work on that will stretch over multiple weeks, but that's limited.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to do some things that are more involved and bigger, just on a personal level, but with running the channel, it's not always the most practical thing. That being said, I am about to start in December. I've kind of blocked out time where I have no obligations for themes, for sponsors. I don't care what happens to video views on a multi-part video. I'm just going to do something I've been wanting to do for a long time, which is building all of the terrain for my future Warhammer table.
Awesome.
And I'm not going to be scratch building it. I'm going to be using kits, and I have 2 boxes that are like huge boxes, like 2 by 3 by 3 foot boxes, like a brick as big as me, all full of sprues that I have to, like thousands of sprues that I'm going to have to cut up and assemble and paint and make into this big toxic wasteland Death Guard city. So
Awesome.
that's going to take some time. I'm actually really terrified of what's going to be involved. The building and painting, I'm not too worried, but cutting out, it's literally going to be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of sprues. I don't know how I'm going to do it in a reasonable amount of time and make it efficient. My original plan when I concocted this idea months ago was, hey, you know what? By the time I get around to it, we'll be doing really good with COVID. I can just get all my buddies involved. We can sit around, drink some beer and snip some sprues and just do it as a group activity.
Mm-hmm.
But now things are really nasty here in Manitoba, so I ain't seeing anybody. So I'm going to be stuck by myself, cutting them all. So I don't know how I'm going to deal with that, and I don't know how I'm going to work it with the channel scheduling. We'll see, but it's hopefully going to be really cool when it's done and worth it.
Sure, it's going to be. There's a lot of people anticipating it, myself included. And actually, when you do, let me know when you're posting that stuff, and then I can share it too. Yeah, because I'm excited to see it, man. Like Death Guard specific table, like Death City. Like, come on, that's awesome.
My idea is that it's going to be kind of like a toxic factory setting with lots of oozing, disgusting, gross bits. The buildings will be the big part, but I'll probably do after that some sort of board to play on that will have like flowing rivers of bile and gross pestilence, and it will be it'll hopefully be sufficiently gross for Death Guard, and it'll be my tribute to 2020.
Yeah. 2020, this is for you.
Yeah.
So for your tools that you use, what would you say are some good, like if people who are just starting to get into terrain making, what would you say are some common must-have tools to get?
I mean, day one, you have no hobby experience. You just want to start building some stuff. You don't have to spend a lot. You want to get yourself an X-Acto knife, a good box cutter, like a big retractable blade, hot glue gun, basic cheap paint brushes, metal ruler, some super glue. And that's enough to do a surprising amount of foam work. After that, I rely a lot on a hot wire table by Proxon. It's like an indispensable tool. It's amazing. It's not that expensive of, say $125 for a tool that's going to be a workhorse. In hobby terms, is not really a huge investment. And I think that's worth getting. I would say if you're just day one and you've never played a lot of games or built a lot of stuff and you just want to dip your toes and try it, I wouldn't buy that right away. Just knives, hot glue gun, go to town, see if you enjoy the process. And once I enjoy this process, then I would definitely pick up a hot wire tool. You'll get a lot of value. It'll pay for itself.
Because you got your handheld ones, and then you have they're a bit bigger.
Yeah, I mean, the handheld ones are great for a certain amount of things, but I wouldn't even at my level consider it a must-have tool. I bust out my handhelds once in a while, and they're handy to have, but the tabletop one is infinitely more useful because you can do a lot of the same stuff that you can do with the handheld on it, but also all of these other things. It's like in carpentry terms, it would be like the table is like a table saw, whereas a handheld is just like a jigsaw. You're not going to cut out perfectly nice big pieces of plywood with a jigsaw. You want a table that you can run stuff through, and it also works as a thickness planer. Once you have that tool, then you can make foam in any thickness, any gauge you want,
Mhm.
which is huge. You know, you can rip thin sheets to make shingles out of. You can make big, thick blocks to make rocks out of. It is the most important foam working tool you could imagine, and yeah, it's worth its weight in foam for sure.
Would you say that you use foam, like the insulation foam, in most of your projects?
I would say like in a lot of them, I tend to use like foam core and dollar store foam in a large chunk of my projects, but that is a decision. That's something I do as a channel to keep the channel the projects as approachable as possible. So I do a lot of things that I wouldn't do as a personal hobbyist myself anymore at my point to keep things beginner friendly, right? Like I'm always trying to make resourceful, cheap, easy builds for people. If I removed the channel entirely and it was just me, the hobbyist, I would be using insulation foam and my hot wire table in almost everything I do and be using it a lot more in depth and be doing a lot more things with it. And I'd also be doing a lot more molding and casting, you know, getting into more serious, you know, techniques. And those are things that I've done on the channel and I've shown them and I've touched on them, but I'm always reluctant to make them the regular thing
Mm.
because I know that the vast majority of my audience isn't in as deep as I am. And I'm constantly bringing in new people to the hobby. You know, so much of my views and my growth comes from people who have not done this before and are just stumbling onto the hobby. So I always want to keep nurturing that.
Right. What would you recommend for a first hot wire table, and what price range would you aim for?
There's only one. And it's the Proxon thermocut hot wire table. That is the only one you should buy, with the exception of there is another company called Hercules who makes it is a straight up knockoff. It is the exact same product. I
Mhm.
haven't used it myself, but functionally it's the same and they're similar price range. Either of those are what you want. They're usually on Amazon. They go from like $110 to 125, 130 American. Uh, there's other companies like that make cheap 20, $30 ones that if you want to flush 20, $30 down the toilet, buy those, but it's literally just wasting money. Don't do it. They are useless. I have a video where I compare one from Hotwire Foam Factory, which is like a cheaper $50 one or something like that,
Mhm.
to the Proxon one. And it's literally a side by side comparison of them doing the same cuts. And watch that video and you will know you don't want to waste your money on the other one. Save, get the better one. I do have, I'll make a plug here on my website, blackmagiccraft.ca. I've put a lot of time into making a resource of essential equipment that is really geared towards beginners and people starting out. And it shows all the stuff that I use. It explains what it is, why I use it, how important it is. Like it will say, hey, this is a thing you should really get, or this is something to consider when you're graduating to the next phase. And you know, the link to what you need. And that's where you can see exactly the cutter that I'm talking about there.
Yeah, that's cool. I've seen it on your site. Thanks for including that. There's someone who left a comment as well. They said, uh, if you, Jeremy, are as articulate as you are now in your videos, he's excited to watch your videos because he hasn't seen your videos yet. And I have to say, you guys are in for a treat if you haven't seen his videos because, I mean, this is just long form, raw, unedited, us talking back and forth, right? This isn't your
I,
videos. Videos are
I'm even
better.
better. I'm better with a script.
Okay, that's the next question. Do you script your videos?
It depends on the type of video. So my videos follow a few different formats, and the format I choose will be dictated either by the nature of the project or just what I'm in the mood to make or the feeling that I'm trying to portray. So some videos are a more tutorial step-by-step scripted voiceover where I'm explaining the process in as succinct a way as possible. And then I have other videos which I would call a vlog style. Well, that's more where I'm just showing you the journey and I'm talking candidly to the camera at different points in the video. So it depends on the project. If it's one where it's a voiceover, it's a scripted thing. If I'm just talking to the camera, it's not a scripted thing, and I will just freeform talk. But I try, even when I'm just freeform talking, to be as clear as possible, be as, I can be long-winded, but I try to cut as much chaff as I can. Older videos, there's more talky that could have been cut. But these days, any videos over the past couple of years, I really try to cut them. One thing you will never hear in my videos, which you'll hear right now talking, is like I try to make it as clean and professional as possible. I also am married to a woman who has English as a second language. So I'm very cognizant of clarity in language. So I try
Diction.
to make my videos easy to understand to a global audience. Now, obviously I only speak in English. However, I try to speak in a way that uses correct verbiage for things, not a lot of slang when discussing technical things. And this is something where my construction management background comes in. I have a background of relaying blueprints and plans between clients, designers, tradespeople, and everything has to be explained in a way that doesn't have ambiguity, that I'm technically telling you exactly what it is and what it has to be and how to do it. And I try to do that in my videos as well. So when I'm building things, I actively avoid general terms like, oh, make sure it's kind of straight or whatever. People use a lot of the incorrect terms. I try to use correct carpentry terms like plumb, square, true, level in the appropriate times. When I'm building a house, I'm for the most part not saying, oh, the little hangy bit off the end. I'll be like, now we're putting in the boards for the soffit and the fascia. Like I try to make it clear so that people can understand it, but more importantly, so people who aren't comfortable with English, who have English as a second language, one, it shows up in the subtitles. I try to speak clearly, so those generated subtitles are pretty decent. They can take those and they can actually run them through a translator and get the right thing. So if I'm, for example, putting a texture on something and I use unsanded tile grout, that's what it's called. So if you're from Germany, you're not going to walk into a store and be able to buy unsanded tile grout. It's going to be called something different. But if you take what I said and you put it in Google and you translate it into German, it's going to tell you what it is. So I try to the best of my ability to be clear, accurate, not always perfect, but I certainly try.
Right. Yeah. No, that makes sense. And that's I think that's the best way of approaching videos in general, to make it so it's as easy as possible for anyone to watch your videos. You just take away those barriers.
Exactly.
Yeah. Is your channel, could all ages watch your channel?
100%. There, with the exception of the first maybe 5 or 6 videos ever on the channel where I'll be drinking a beer and maybe dropped a very safe curse word, not an extreme one. That's it. After that, I made a decision early on that I wanted all of my content to be family friendly. I don't make videos for children.
Right.
However, I'm really aware of the fact that a lot of families hobby together and a lot of kids see and soak up what their parents are doing and watching. So if, mom or dad is watching one of my videos on the TV in the same room as the kid, they don't have to worry that I'm going to be dropping a bunch of F-bombs or, really doing anything. Obviously a lot of what I do deals with dark themes and imagery and Dungeons and Dragons. And there might be like, we're going to build a temple of blood for this cult. So take that with a grain of like, however,
Yeah.
I don't know where people fit on that spectrum, but those are also clearly indicated by the thumbnail and title what the project is.
Yeah.
If it's a video where I'm making trees or a little cottage, there's not going to be anything too dicey in there. And, you know, even something as simple as like drinking a beer, you know, I did that in the first couple of videos because I was kind of a theme in the hobby space at the time.
Mm.
I enjoy a beer here and there, but I'd rather set a good example for younger people. And I try, even when it comes to safety stuff, to try to promote hobbying safely and, you know, taking precautions with cutting and ventilation and all that. Yeah. So I try to be a responsible YouTuber to the best of my ability.
What do you do with your projects when you're done with them?
I put them on a shelf and they go in the background of videos. Some of them get played with for games in a normal world. The vast majority of the stuff I hang on to and I keep just creating space to display them. However, once in a while I purge and I go through stuff of like, you know, I don't really like this that much. It's not really that needed for games. I'll probably never use it again. And I get rid of it. And a lot of the time I will just give those to friends who also play games, specifically some friends who have kids or teenagers who do gaming stuff. So I try to give it to them and let them have it and they can play with it. And some things, I'm going to be honest, I just throw out because they're
No way.
They're just, but I mean, these are things that are justifiable to throw out. They're not really that great, or they're things where I wanted to teach somebody how to make something and I just made one example of it, but it's something that you would actually have to build several of to be usable.
Okay.
I just made one example for filming.
Yeah.
I'll chuck that out.
Right.
But, yeah.
Would you ever consider selling them?
I don't know. Like, I mean, I've kind of thought about it. One, I don't really want to deal with the hassle of selling them. And I feel like there's this weird thing about pricing it where the amount of time I put in, what I think would be worth the time and effort and, you know, maybe even like the bit of notoriety of it's one of the things that was built in one of my videos. I don't know that price point that it deserves could really be justified. I feel like what they should be sold for, I wouldn't feel right selling it for that, but I also wouldn't want to just sell them for super cheap. And I don't know. So it's something I've just avoided. I've had a lot of people ask for commission work, and I've always said no. I've never done a commission piece, and I don't want to say I never will. What I'll say is I will never do a commission piece for just a random hobbyist on the internet who wants something. I would love to do a commission piece if Wizards of the Coast said, hey, can you build something for the next Acquisitions Incorporated stream or for the release of Dungeons and Dragons 6th edition? Can you build us a prop? Yeah, of course I'm going to jump on something like that. Or if a short film, a movie maker wanted something, there's those kind of things where I might do as a vanity project because it would be really cool and I would love to do it.
Yeah.
But in terms of just making things to sell for commission, that's not something I have any interest in doing. My goal is to teach people how to make it themselves.
Right.
Like that's it. Making commission pieces goes against my entire business model, which is empowering people to make this stuff for themselves.
True. Interesting. Yeah. Interesting that you bring that up. So we're going to change gears a little bit right now. We're going to do a chaos comment bomb. So for those of us who are watching right now and you're not sure what a chaos comment bomb is, this is what a chaos comment bomb is. I'm going to provide you with a link in the description, or in the chat rather, and it's going to bring you to a YouTube video. Now this one has been recommended by Jeremy, and here, I'll just post it right here. I'll post it a bunch of times so it's unquestionable. It's going to be a block of links. Okay, so what you do is you leave a comment, and the comment could be something like, Dave and Jeremy say hi from the Shrine of Chaos. It could also be, visit Black Magic Craft because you'll learn awesome stuff there. Or it could be collect chaos and did start a Death Guard army. But it doesn't matter what you leave.
Yeah, go well bomb anything, but he's got some videos where he built his own great unclean one, I think. Yeah, so you maybe can go Death Guard up those comments. We'll leave some nerdly goodness comments for him.
So this is Nerdcraft HQ. I had never heard of this channel before Jeremy introduced me to this channel, and looks cool. And
yeah, he's a great guy. He does like really thoughtful kind of storytelling videos, and it's nice cozy videos, nice and short, but good times. Nice artistic videos.
Yeah. You guys are great without Chaos Comment Bombs. Like you guys, these bombs don't exist without you guys, obviously, because we need your participation. And it's a tradition that we do it before we do the giveaway, which, by the way, we are doing a giveaway. We'll be giving away some CSM or Chaos Space Marines for those of us who don't know what that is or who were questioning what that is. So very fun. You guys are awesome. Thank you very much. I'll give you another few seconds there to leave your comments on that. A lot of times I don't know the end result of what happens when Chaos Comment Bombs are left. The odd time that I do find out afterwards is fun. But it's not about that. It's just about just spreading some fun in the hobby. So again, you guys make it possible. So thanks for that. And okay, for the giveaway, this is a giveaway. This is Chaos Terminators. So if you want to be entered to win this, what you need to do is leave a comment. Type it right now. And the word is Chaos Terminator. So just type that. And if you do that, that'll indicate visually to me that should my mouse cursor randomly land on you, then you're okay with me sending this to you through the warp. That's really all that means. It's a visual indication of that. So whether you're on Twitch or YouTube or Facebook or Periscope, doesn't matter. If the mouse cursor lands on you, then the Eye of Terror sees you and chooses you for its path to glory. And I'll give you guys a moment just to account for the lag in stream, depending on where you may be watching us from. Which I got to say, you said you're from Manitoba.
I am. I'm a prairie boy.
Now, how close
Winnipeg.
are you to Winnipeg?
I'm in Winnipeg. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I am. Yeah, I am in Winnipeg, born and raised. Well, not technically born. I was born in Regina, lived there for 1 week, and then lived the remainder of my life in Winnipeg, with the exception of 1 year when I moved to Edmonton for a year. But yeah, I'm a Winnipegger through and through.
Winnipegger.
Yeah.
What's population there?
In actual city metro, 750,000, something like that.
Oh yeah. Okay. All right. So I wasn't sure. That's significant. So it's
We're growing slowly but surely. But yeah, the city we're at, like, I think it's maybe 780,000, getting close to 800,000 in the city.
Yeah.
The province is right now 1.4 million.
So the one city has half of the entire province.
Yeah, and there's no other city that has the other half. It's made up. The rest are made up of small cities like Brandon and Portage la Prairie, Steinbach, that have 40,000 people, I think, 20,000. So
yeah,
it's the biggest city for a very wide area of land, because there's nothing big even remotely close. Edmonton and Calgary are 14-hour drive to the west.
Mm-hmm.
To the east, I mean, I don't know, is Thunder Bay a big city? Not really. It's still far. Like, we're far from everything. The closest major city is Minneapolis, really.
Oh, okay.
That's still 8 hours away. So
yeah, cool.
Yeah, and you guys are in Ontario, right? Somewhere?
I
don't know where, though.
Yes, we're in Welland, which is 10-15 minutes from Niagara Falls.
Okay.
Yeah, which is about 30 minutes from the border.
Pretty far from me, actually.
Yeah, you're probably, if I were to drive it, because I've driven it the stateside. I haven't gone Canada side. Driving it to, I've driven out to Alberta and BC, before, there and back. So I don't know.
I'm sure it's in the stop in a hotel and spend the night
I did it straight with a
territory.
friend. Like we drove nonstop because we just took shifts. Right, it took 36
Oh, okay,
hours.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, actual hours not sure.
I think that like Toronto is 28-hour drive from Winnipeg, so I don't know how much you tag on to that.
Okay, going through Ontario,
Going through
north.
Ontario, yeah.
Yeah, that would make sense. All right. Okay, choosing a winner here for the Shrine of Chaos. For these Chaos Terminators. Okay, so we're randomly scrolling. It's kind of archaic the way we do this, but until we implement a new system, that's how it's going to be. In the meantime, 3, 2, 1, boom. This is going to be Stone Fox SPQR. Okay, speaker. Stone Fox speaker. That's a Twitch viewer. Here, let me just write this down really quick. Stone Fox SPQR. That's what I said, right? SPQR?
So
Speaker? Okay. So congratulations. So on Twitch, send me a whisper and provide your shipping address, email, phone number, all that good stuff, so that we can ship these Chaos Terminators out to you. And so, Jeremy, where, other than YouTube, where do you like people to find you?
you can check out on the Facebook is a good way to keep up and see some pictures, and Instagram. Usually, if you want to like actually see the stuff that I'm doing close up and not quick in a video, that would be the place. And blackmagicraft.ca is the website with the central quip page. But really, the YouTube channel, that's the mothership. That's where I want people to land and check out some videos, stick around for a while, hopefully.
And for those watching right now, and even those watching after the fact, links to Jeremy's channel, his YouTube channel are included in this post itself. So if you're watching this, whether you're on Facebook or Twitch or YouTube right now, if you look in the post for this, you'll see links to his channel and to his website. And before we go really quick, Jeremy, if you're cool with it, I'd like to show off a couple of your projects.
Yeah, let's do it.
Just give people an idea. So I'm going to switch it up a bit. Actually, hold on one second. Let's go here. All right. And let's go to your Instagram. All right. So now we're talking about, I'm not sure if you could see what I'm seeing, or if you,
I'm not seeing your screen share.
Okay. So here, let's start. This is on your Instagram. I'm looking at a windmill right now. Is this one of the things you're talking about with the foam core?
No, so that's a rare exception where that is an MDF kit. So that's
really?
I think from War Cradle.
Okay.
That's an MDF kit, but which is not something I very often do. That was the first and last MDF kit that I ever assembled. Essentially, the goal with that was, what can we do with it? Like, how can we kick it up a notch, and how good can we make a MDF kit look using some of the handcrafted techniques.
Cool. This one caught my eye here, these dumpsters.
Yeah. So the dumpsters, those are purely scratch built dumpsters, not foam, but like cardstock, chipboard, and they're basically all made of paper. Okay. Yeah, those are 100% scratch built dumpsters.
Is that cardboard for the ridges up top?
It's corrugated paper.
Okay, so it's craft
comes
paper.
Like that. So it's essentially like if you rip the one layer off the cardboard, except it's already done and neater and at a smaller scale than you're going to find at most cardboard.
Yeah, true.
But
and the chains, is that like?
So the chain is jewelry.
Yeah,
chain. Same thing you would use for on a mini or modeling.
Dollar store.
Chain I think is a Michael's purchase, probably a roll, because you can buy a big roll of that stuff for really cheap.
So the graffiti, I have to ask, so is that something, or did you just make up something?
Well, one of the graffiti says BMC, so there's that. I usually, when I'm doing any sort of graffiti kind of thing, I'll drop a BMC for Black Magic Craft.
Nice.
And then the rest of the stuff, I got to remember. Hold on, I got to look at it. What does it say here? So one just says war, because I don't know. It seems like a thing people might spray on. I don't remember what some of the Stuff says Savage, Monk. Uh, just making stuff up, really. Just really generic tag like King. That's what a tagger might call himself.
Yeah.
King, Rogue. But yeah, very generic sort of things, and anything that's a symbol is just a freehand nonsense. Really. Sometimes when I do graffiti, there is more behind it. There, if you look in the first top 6, there is a little diorama I did for the movie Falling Down.
Like Michael Douglas?
Yeah, Michael Douglas. I recreated the DVD cover, like an iconic theme there. So those steps are littered with graffiti.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that graffiti is actually stuff that I tried to mimic or copy from the real graffiti that's in the scene. You don't get a very good look at it. So the things that I could, see and understand what it was, I replicated some things. I couldn't tell what it was, but I got the general feel for the shape and color, and I replicated that. And then everything else, I just filled in with stuff that I thought would be appropriate graffiti on some ruined steps in 1990s Oakland, California, or wherever that was taking place. So there was a lot more thought into that graffiti than there was on, say the dumpsters.
Right. Where's that model from?
That model, it's 3D printed, so it's from a printing service. That one was, oh man, I can't even remember the name of the company. If you go to the video, there's a video for it. The link will be for the Patreon that does that, and they do a whole bunch of like fantasy D&D old school kind of minis, but they also have a series of like iconic movie characters. So there's like Kill Bill, Big Lebowski, Terminator, these kind of really iconic things that don't normally get a miniature.
Right.
And they also have, they call them the modern day survivors. Basically, they're human characters from movies that you love that you can just use in a whatever kind of model tabletop game like Zombicide or whatever you want. And then they have zombified versions as well. So They had this Bill model, and I was like, I have to do something with that. It was super cool. It was a toss up though. I came very close to doing a Big Lebowski diorama so that I could make a rug that really tied the diorama together. But I felt like this one actually suited the medium a little bit better.
Cool. Just looking at your death guard here. You got some plague bearers.
Oh yeah, there should be some photos in there of some of my Nurgle demons and some of my plague marines.
Nice.
And actually, tomorrow, the video that's going live tomorrow is a real heavy Hellbrute conversion. I don't like the Hellbrute model, and I did the most involved kit bash conversion I've ever done. So that's going to be the video tomorrow, and I'm actually really excited about it. It turned out pretty cool.
I like the skulls on the base of your. It looks like a demon prince there. In the middle.
Yeah, so that's like a third-party stand-in for my demon prints that I just loaded with skulls from the Citadel skull box, which is kind of an epiphany moment for me. I have a video on that, painting that guy, and one of the things I touched on was those skulls. I've found myself over time using them, but being really stingy with them. And like, oh, I'll put a skull here, a skull there. And I realized, why? This box is full of hundreds of skulls. This kit is really cheap. I can just put 50 skulls on a base. Who cares? Go nuts. Go for it. Whatever. You can just buy another box of skulls. They're not that expensive.
That's right.
So I really filled that base up with all those little individual skulls from the box there.
Where'd you get that box of skulls from?
That's just the Citadel.
Oh, so it is. Okay.
The Citadel skull box. Yeah.
Because I saw that recently. Yeah, and I haven't seen another. I'm sure it exists, but I just haven't seen another one. But okay.
I don't know of any other company. Green Stuff World, I know you can buy bags of resin cast skulls. They have that too, and I have some of those, but something that small in a resin cast is not as nice as a injection molded GW mini, right? There's more cleanup work on those little skulls for the resin ones. So yeah, I like them. It's a great thing. Those skulls find a home in lots of projects. It's a really easy way to add a little detail to something, put a little skull on it.
So I pulled up this looks like a kind of shaman hut out of sticks.
Oh yeah. So that's I don't know what that is. Like literally that's the videos. I don't know what this is. Where I live in a very kind of rural portion of Winnipeg, like right on the outskirts. It's a small town that got eaten up by the city at some point in the 70s. And I'm surrounded by nature. I live on a half acre of forested property, lots of trails, and I go walking on them. And I always randomly encounter these huts that I guess kids make out of sticks.
Mm-hmm.
Some people say that they're like, told me that, oh, they're for hunters. They're not for hunters. It's in city limits. But there's just a lot of these things around. And I thought those would fit really well in a fantasy setting in D&D, for your little seer or shaman or whatever. And so one day I decided I was going to make them, and I actually gathered twigs from the area that I found these things in real life and took people to see them in the video. And yeah, and I made a little one. And there, again, some skulls from the
Yep.
kit.
Yep.
Yeah, little way to decorate it.
What'd you use for the leaves on the bottom?
For like the ground cover, like dirty leaves,
Yeah.
or yeah, that's I'm pretty sure that would have been tea, probably tea bags.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I just empty out dry tea and mix it with some glue, put it on, and then I usually do like ink washes on them, like with the airbrush, putting some brown wash or ink. I
Yeah.
don't remember specifically on this one, but yeah, that I'm almost sure that would be some dried tea leaves.
And for the sticks, did you ink wash some of those?
I did. I actually airbrushed those with basically glazed them with some ink, and that
Right.
probably it was probably actual like artist acrylic ink that's like really high pigmented, so it kind of made them more cohesive and kind of blend together and look like they're from the same environment. Because sometimes that's a tricky thing with natural elements when you're building stuff is that it looks wrong or it looks
Right.
fake.
Right.
Like a painted rock looks more right than a unpainted real rock, which
100%.
a lot of people don't understand. Oh, you get those comments of, "Oh, what did you do? You painted a rock to look like a rock," or "Oh, congrats, you painted a stick to look like a stick." It's like, yeah, because it actually makes it more cohesive
Yep.
with all the other painted things, right?
That's right. Yeah. No, 100%. I agree. I remember running into that years ago. It's like this is a strange concept, but it totally works.
Yeah, sometimes something about the scale of things too. If you just take a rock and put it on something, somehow your brain interprets it as the one-to-one real life sized thing that it is you're looking at. Whereas if you paint it, your brain shrinks it down and puts it into that scale world that you're working in.
So this is going back quite a ways here. All right. So you have this like Viking. We'll just look at a couple more here. So you got a Viking structure, yurt, hut,
Is that
house.
the one? Okay, so there's one that looks like a hull of a boat.
Yes.
That's what you're looking at there. Yeah. So that's the shipwreck cottage. That was like an idea that a patron had suggested to me, like making a like a boathouse, like a cottage out of a shipwreck. Think
Mm-hmm.
of like a Nordic village where maybe an old ship comes ashore and they turn it into a building. So that's what I made, and I basically built a little bit of a house, tried to make it look like an old Viking ship, but turned it into a little market stand. And that's like a piece that actually got used in my RPG game.
Cool.
And in my game, they were in this sort of coastal village. It was a very Call of Cthulhu kind of little adventure in this, with the old ones in the ocean and all this. And I used that as the inn. But in the game, it wasn't just like the broken bit of a hull of a ship on shore. In the game, it actually is the whole boat that goes underground.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was all the different levels. The above ground was the lobby for the inn, and then below that there was the bar, and then below that there was rooms, and it was basically the whole ship upturned upright and buried underground. And yeah, it was kind of a fun little thing in game.
So there's a video tutorial on this, right?
Yeah, if it's on the Instagram, those are the like glamour photos for the video. So
Gotcha.
anything that's on that Instagram, there is a video about it.
So I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions, which I would probably
Sure,
find out by watching the video, but I'm just because I'm looking at it right now, I want to know.
for sure.
So for the wood, is that balsa wood?
No, that is foam.
Awesome. I love
That
it.
is all foam,
Okay,
because
that's awesome.
much like the painting real things to look like real things, like painting a rock to look like a rock.
Yeah,
A lot of people are kind of confused why I so often use foam to make wood. Why don't I just use wood?
right.
And for me, the answer is it's a lot easier to make scale wood
Mm,
look realistic from foam than it is from wood.
from real wood, yeah.
Balsa wood is an exception. You can texture balsa wood and make it look grainy, and it works pretty well. But things like popsicle sticks, coffee stir sticks, that wood is too hard. The grain is too big.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. It takes a lot of effort to. And I have things that I've made out of that. There's like a Goblin Siege Tower. I made that out of real wood for just structural integrity, and it takes so much extra work to make it look like wood. Foam, I run a wire brush over it, and it looks like wood instantly.
That's what that is. It's a wire brush.
Yeah, it's a wire brush, like a barbecue scrubbing kind of brush.
Yep.
And like with balsa wood, you can do that too. I don't use balsa wood because I've never been able to find a good local or reasonable ship to me price source for balsa wood in large quantities for cheap. Balsa wood, I got to buy from the hobby store or the craft store, and it's expensive to do a lot of stuff. Foam, I mean, that chip is made out of an amount of foam that's probably a number less than 1 cent. It's an incalculable amount of foam.
Awesome.
It's so little.
Right.
Whereas if I made that out of balsa wood, I would have had to bought $10 in balsa wood to make that. Now, $10 is not a lot. Like if you're making something for yourself and you want to have it be durable and whatever, it is reasonable.
Yeah.
But because I'm making stuff regularly and I want it to remain cheap, foam makes sense. And I just always have foam, and I can, like I said, with that tool, I can cut it into any thickness I want and apply many different textures to it.
That's so cool. I love. You know what? I have to say, the wood look out of the foam is the best I've seen. I've got to say.
Thanks.
'Cause
Yeah, and
honestly,
that one,
like, I
that
thought
one
it
in
was wood.
particular
Yeah.
turned out really good.
Yeah.
It has that grade cedar look.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like new wood. It looks like something that has seen a lot of sea journeys and then sat on a coast for 50, 60, 70 years. For me, I have a really old 50-year-old cedar fence on my property
Uh-huh.
that looks exactly like that. So that's kind of like when I'm painting, I can look out my window, and that's what I try to emulate when I'm going for that kind of a wood look, is that grayed, nasty cedar with all the green sort of like fungal growth, the mold or moss on it. And yeah, that one turned out better than some of them do. I'll say that.
So for the windows, is that cardboard?
No, so the windows, there is a cheat there. Those are laser cut MDF windows. So
Okay. All right.
yeah, I have a friend, Gerard. He runs a company called Shifting Lands. He makes a bunch of jigs for hot wire tools, but he also makes a bunch of laser cut MDF bits for model building. And one of the things he makes is windows. So those are little MDF windows, because you could make that out of cardboard, but that's a real tedious to get them that precise. It takes a lot of time.
Right.
And a build like this already took a fair bit of time.
Mm-hmm.
So I just use that. And then I just fill in the glass using, honestly, I couldn't tell you what I used on that glass because I use a few different things, Vallejo water texture, UV resin, or clear epoxy. It's one of those three things. They all kind of do the same thing. That one's probably maybe UV resin.
Is that natural reflection, or do you paint little white marks?
That's actual reflection because it's a glossy resin kind of glass. Yeah.
Cool. Couldn't tell. Couldn't tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could go either way, honestly. By the way.
Now, on that build, the regret on that build, because everything I make, I'm always trying new things. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of time when I'll make something and I have a tried and tested way that I know would work well, but I feel like it's not that interesting if I don't try different things to either discover something cool or show a funny failure in a video. And those windows are the one thing that I really regret on it. One is that I tried to paint them differently so that they would look like new wood windows put in an old wood ship. And they do look like that. They look different, but I think they're too jarringly different. That would, I should have blended them a little bit more. And then the color behind them, I tried to paint like a window glow,
Right.
because there's a solid surface behind there. And I didn't do a really great job of that. I should have done it with a lot more yellows, and it could have been done a lot better. It also would have been the best result is if they just didn't have a solid back. I just left a hole, and in the hollow ship, just put a flickering tea light. It works great. It really works really well.
Cool.
But that's something that I've done a lot of times in videos, so I don't want to repeat the same steps over and over and over again. Right. Otherwise, then I'm essentially just doing the same thing every time.
How did you do the fur over the door?
So the fur, I was trying to go for like a seal skin, and that I believe was a paper towel. I think, yeah, that would be a paper towel that's like doused in glue and shaped. I think I must have put like a thin cardstock backer to hold it up or whatever. But yeah, it's just glue, wet, soggy paper towel, and then painted with some inks to try to get that kind of seal pattern.
That's me. Sorry. I don't know if you heard my phone. Cool. Never would have thought paper towel.
Yeah, which if you look at the like that windmill that you're looking at there, same thing with that. The sails, the old worn out sails, that I think that one I used toilet paper
Okay.
though, but yeah, same idea, just glue, like watered down glue draped over. It works really well, and it actually ends up being pretty rigid and durable in the end. The only caveat is that it takes a very long time for it to dry.
Right.
Don't do it if you want to game with it that day.
Yeah.
Sure.
How long does that take to dry?
It's going to have to sit for, I mean, it depends how warm and humid your space is.
Right.
But if you set it like in front of a heater, it's still going to take, a day or two to dry out.
Right.
You could, what I do sometimes for 2 months of the year when it's summer in Winnipeg, I'll put it in the hot car, where it's really, really hot sitting in the sun all day, and it'll kind of like kiln dry it,
Oh yeah.
put it on your dashboard and dries out a little bit faster.
How'd you do the horns up top?
The horns on that, how did I do that? Those, I look at it again. I'm pretty sure that was just green stuff, just a roll of green stuff, and then shaped, which I think also, the horns I did out of green stuff. Same with by the door, there's like a hanging thing of like different like herbs and coral and garlic or whatever. That's just little balls of green stuff sculpted onto a metal wire.
Did you do the fruit as well?
No, those I didn't. The tables there, those are from what's it called? The terrain crate. Mantic. Mantic makes those terrain crate boxes that are just full of little bits.
Oh, yeah.
So those two tables, as well as in the corner, there's like a bucket with some fruit. Those are from those kits. But yeah, the other stuff would have been sculpted. Like even something like the door knocker. Those are things that I've sculpted out of green stuff with a little piece of jewelry that I've molded and cast, and
Cool.
I have a little door knocker that I use. So you'll see that same door knocker sometimes appearing on other builds. It's kind of like, I guess, a theme. In my world, it's the same door maker who makes all the doorknobs for every house.
So for the looks like rope, where the horns are, you have this rope that's attaching it to the wood. What is that?
So that is, I think it's for jewelry. It's a metal wire, but it's braided So at that scale, it looks like it has that look of a braided rope
Yeah.
at just the right size.
Yes.
And it's nice because it's rigid, so you can bend it and actually use it to hold stuff in place. So those
Ah.
horns, for example, rather than if it was made out of use some string or an actual fiber rope, I would have had to wrap the horns, glue them in place, and then attach the horns to the structure. But what I actually did is I took the metal wire and essentially created staples. So they're U-shaped wire, and they're just pierced right into the foam, holding those in place with a dab of super glue. So it serves double duty. And that's one of the things I also really, really love about foam crafting, and why I don't like about wood as much, is that when you get into these final details, you can just pierce things into it really easily,
Yeah.
or cut things out really easily.
Right.
It's really nice for doing those finishing touches. Say something like that door knocker, if you don't want it standing proud and projecting too much, you can actually like just push it in and indent the foam slightly and actually slightly embed it. It has some give to it.
I like your carpentry term there of standing proud.
Standing proud, yes.
Yeah.
That's one of those terms for sure.
That's cool, man. No, that's so cool. I love it. I'm just kind of scrolling through and looking at the different angles here, and I see now, seeing the different angles, I can see how it's the bow or stern of a ship. I'm not sure what you said.
My ship terminology is not as good as my regular carpentry terminology, so I could be wrong. I think it's the bow.
One of the ends.
I don't know. It's the end of a ship.
It's the end.
I'm sure if you go to that video and look through the comments, there's plenty of people angrily telling me all the incorrect ship building terminology I use. And actually on that one, I even took some effort to like look up some diagrams so I knew the names of, I don't remember them now, but like the piece in the middle that goes down like the spine, there is a specific name for that, and I actually looked it up so that I could use the correct term, but I don't remember it now.
Well, Jeremy, it's been great. Here, let me just go back here. So, yeah, it's been great having you on the stream, and thank you everyone who's joined us in our journey here and learning more about this terrain, learning more about Black Magic Craft. Certainly welcome back anytime, especially the fact that you collect Death Guard. You're a chaos player at heart. That was a happy accident.
Touch base with me once I've actually got some Warhammer games under my belt and can talk about
Yeah, we could talk about some more chaos stuff for sure. So check out Black Magic Craft. All the links are provided in this post, and so to Jeremy's YouTube channel, Black Magic Craft. Also, he's got a Patreon, so you can support him directly there if you guys want, and you get more stuff on there. I'm assuming you get more.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to see that Hellbrute conversion model before it comes out, it's available early for my Patreon supporters. Go check it out today if you want to see it.
Make sure to tune in next week, Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, for the Shrine of Chaos. Thank you very much, everybody, and happy wargaming.
Cheers, everybody. Thanks for